So it's been a while since I've been on, and you might be wondering where I've been, or maybe this is the first time you're watching. And I just want to say the best thing that could have happened as far as game development for me goes happened. It happened. And in fact, it's so good I can't tell you. I can't even tell you. And I'm not all I want to say is I'm going to get you guys there too. And what do I mean? What am I even talking about? I think anybody who's watching these videos has the same dream. They want to work in games. They want to get they want to spend every minute, every day doing something that they love. And I can get you there. And I'm not going to teach. I see a lot of people out there, they're doing, indie stuff, and that's great. But I think it's rare that you see somebody who actually gets into working in games, and then they might start out doing videos or whatever, but then they disappear because they're good, they're making their living from doing games or whatever. But how many of those people then come back and say, "Hey man, here's what you need. Here's how you can break in, and here's how you can really show your best." Because I when I first started, I had no idea really what I was doing, and it's always this big mystery. Can I get into games? How do I, where do I start? All of these sorts of things. And so, let me just start out though by giving a disclaimer that I'm not going to be giving you any secrets. Everything that I'm telling you is stuff that you can search online. But I'm more of like a funnel. I'm going to be a funnel for you guys. I'm going to be the funnel and take all the information that I've gotten off the internet and personal experience. I'm going to lump it into some videos, and I'm going to have chats. Like today is going to be a chat. You see stuff up on my screen. That's just a side project I'm working on. And I'm going to talk to you about what you guys need to get where I'm at. And then I'm going to have, like traditionally what I had done, where I had done tutorials, because it's one thing to talk about, oh hey, this is great, and your life's going to be wonderful, and here's all what you need to do, but we need to dig down deep, and we will do that. So what are these videos for? These videos are going to be for someone who wants to truly be a professional in Unreal Engine, and really you can apply especially these chat videos to any engine or game development or design. But it's going to be for truly somebody that wants to do it professionally. But does that mean it's not for beginners? No, it can be for beginners. Beginners or advanced are going to take from this, and that's the thing. If there's one thing I've learned, you're always going to be watching tutorials. It doesn't matter how advanced you get. You may not be necessarily watching a video, but you might be looking at documentation as you get farther along. But no matter what, everybody is still doing it. So anyway, we're going to be talking game development. We're going to be talking game design. We're going to be talking about kind of how to get yourself into that position where you can make a living from it and get to do what you want to do every day. Basically, let's just start by how I even got there. I started out I did a demo. Like I made a piece restored, and I put it up on Steam, and that probably was the number one thing that got me my foot in the door, so to speak. And so what I could recommend or say to you definitely to do is to make a game. And I've heard this over and over and over again, make a game, but it's so true. You have to at least make a game, even if it's a crap game, and you got to finish it. You got to go all the way through, beginning to end, and then you have to post it so everybody can throw rocks at you and tell you how horrible your game is, because that's going to make you grow, and that's what you have to do. So make a game, put it out there, get it out on Steam. Doesn't matter what engine you're using. I highly recommend Unreal Engine just because it's great for multiplayer. It has a visual scripting system, all these sorts of things. But so once I did that, then I was like, okay, now what? I got a game. How do I break into this industry? So I started looking, trying to think of the apps I was using. was looking at various apps. I would look at like what job positions are available and what the requirements were, and you know, for my favorite studios. And I told myself, you know, I'm just gonna put in for exactly what I want. I decided I wasn't gonna go, oh, I'll work my way up, you know, start in testing and, you know, work my way into the position I want. No, I put in for exactly the position I want, and I recommend you do exactly the same thing. Because you know, it can be hard to move around in any industry. I've found this in prior work that I had done. Go for what you want right away, because you could get in there, and if you're good at what you do, they might want to keep you where you're at, and you might have aspirations to go higher. So do what I did. Go in at exactly the position you want to get. You know, obviously you gotta, you know, do the homework by making your own game. And so speaking of that, there was more that I wish that somebody had told me, like what people were looking for. Like, let's say you're going to go into game design development, and there's a difference between design and development. We'll talk about that. So basically, I just knew that I wanted to work in Unreal. I didn't know there were all these different functionalities, engineers versus, you know, what's an engineer, developer versus a designer. So let's just start there. And I'm probably a hybrid, okay, when it comes to design and development. I sit in the middle, which is an unusual spot. So a game designer, with that person, that could be anybody. It covers a huge spectrum, right? So you could have somebody that really doesn't know necessarily the technicalities of how the engine works, but they have a really good concept of like what's great about a game. Like, they know, man, I want a game, you know, where you do this and then you do that, and they really have the mechanics of the game down, and they can really lay it out, and they don't even necessarily have to even touch the engine, and that's a really creative type personality that's really good at that. And there are jobs that are just that. Usually those are, you know, for people a little higher up, but that's not to say you can't start there, because you can. If you have a good concept of games and stuff, but you're not really technical, there's a position for you. Just so you know. So don't get frustrated if you're like, I don't know all these technicalities. So that would be your game designer. And so let's say maybe you know a little bit technicalities. There are people that basically know how to manipulate values. They know how to open the editor, of course, and change, you know, a variable here or there to get, you know, more, you know, ammunition, supply drops, increased character speed. They like to turn knobs, and they're really good at turning those knobs and making a game more fun. That's leading more into the technical design arena, but it's still pretty much game designer. Then, as you get more and more technically proficient, you come into the technical designer role. And technical design, you're gonna be doing a lot more scripting, and even getting into the C++, or actually terminology-wise, we should start whatever engine you're using. We'll call it native programming. So to where you're doing some computer programming, you're doing some scripting. I don't know about other engines, but I imagine a lot of them have a visual scripting on top of whatever native language. And I really don't know any of the other engines besides Unreal. I know C# and Unity. I know they have that, and Unreal, of course, is C++. And so the technical designer, he's going to be working a lot between design, and then on the other end of the spectrum would be engineering, and that's commonly what you would call a game developer. And developer and engineer, those can be synonymous terms, and those guys are going to be the ones that are your hardcore coders, and they're not really going to be spending, you know, a whole lot of time in the editor turning knobs. They're going to be building those knobs, and they're going to be getting all the technical stuff mapped out and ready to go, all the base classes made, all of these sorts of things, so that way when a designer or technical designer gets in there, they got something to start with, okay? So And then if there's any bugs that arise, you're going to go to that engineer and you're going to be like, hey man, I have this problem. And so you can fall anywhere in that spectrum. So when I first started applying and looking at different things, I was just going in. I just always were applying for developer positions because I didn't know the difference. So I didn't know, okay, what's a designer developer? So I just put in for all these things, and so that's as I just explained is really high on the engineering. So I would walk into places, and they would throw down all these math problems or throw a bunch of math problems at me, and I'm like, what? And that was my biggest surprise was. I would go for a position specifically in Unreal, and I would get there, and none of the testing. It didn't matter how much I knew about the editor or whatever. What mattered were these basic programming tests that I was getting thrown at me, and these are the most demanded positions, by the way, because the most people they're just not good at math. They're not. It's hard to find people, so those positions are always there. There's people always seeking it. And so that was the biggest shock for me. And I am going to branch off on this discussion a little bit and say that if I could go back in time and do this a little bit differently, a little bit better, I would have definitely gotten my math skills a lot higher. And so what type of math? Because that was the other thing. Once I knew I needed math, it was like, okay, well, what type of math do I need to know? Specifically vector math. That's the big thing, vector math. And I'll probably do a separate video on, but basically what it is what angles between different objects. Let's say you got an AI and you have another character. Okay, what's the rotation amount that you need to make? How far does your character need to turn? And you might say, well, there's helper functions in Unreal that'll do that for you, but reality, you're going to be doing a lot of custom stuff, because let's just say this: all the easy stuff is done. That's done by, you just assume that's already done by some other designer or whatever. The job that you're going to probably get handed is when stuff doesn't work. And really what you're going to do in general is going to be just making things work that aren't working for some reason. That because it just seems that usually a lot of the easygoing fun stuff that it's just already done. Somebody already did it. So knowing what to do when functions, the helper functions in Unreal aren't working, that's who they're looking for, and that's really what the positions are. Is they need somebody who can solve the problems for them. So like I said, if I could go back in time, that would be the number one thing, is get up on vector math and understand all those things. And in this thing that I didn't like was when they presented it to me, a lot of them were in like textbook format. So it wasn't even in like programming language. So you might know, okay, I know how to do math in C++. Well, great. But do you know all the various symbols? Like if you were to see it written out on paper, not even, because there was some stuff like that where it's like it's just written out on paper and you gotta figure it out. So I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just saying it sucks, but you gotta, if you're wanting to get in, where the jobs are at, then you definitely should start learning that. And I know I would hate to hear that, somebody telling me that, but it just get over it, as far as, just accept it and know you gotta learn it. Now, I'm not saying I did find a way to, there are smaller available positions out there you can find your way into. I'm just trying to show you the easiest way if you walked in the door and completely understood vector math and all these various functions and how it works. I'm just trying to get you there quicker than I did. Not to say you can't get in without knowing that, but more than likely that's the best thing. So the other thing that might hold you back, that shouldn't hold you back, is going to be these various concerns of like your age. Maybe you might be scared that, I can't break into the industry now. I'm too old. Well, look at me. I'm definitely older, and that's what I was really worried about. I'm like, I'm great. I'm going to be going up against some 20-year-old, and I didn't do. I didn't really do a whole lot of, let's just say I had a whole nother blue collar job line. I did a whole totally unrelated to games, computers, anything like that before I ever got into this. So don't think because you're too old, or because I'll see this all the time. They'll be like, well, how old am I too old to get started? No, you're not. I mean, here's the deal. If you can do the job, they want you. Whoever you are, if you can solve the problem, that's the number one thing. So I kind of glossed over what the purpose of these upcoming videos are for. Is basically just to get you ready. So, because if you absolutely try your hardest, you will get the job that you want. It's going to happen, and you have to have that mentality. And I'm not saying that that it's going to be some magical thing. If you set it in your head that it's going to happen, it will happen. You just have to push and push and push and push and push and push until you get there, and you will get there. And so what these videos are going to not only help you get there, but once you're there, then you got to actually solve the problems. And if you present some blueprint or code that's just unprofessional looking, just because you got there doesn't mean you can't find yourself right back out the door. And that would really suck. So what I want to help you do is when you finally do get there and you start and you have, and don't think that's some crazy thing that'll never happen. It will happen. Just have it in your head. You're going to get there. But that first code review you send in, you don't want it to look like garbage. So I will help you get your code review, your code looking good, your blueprints looking phenomenal. You wouldn't believe some of the stuff. I know this because I came in with this was my problem. I had just messy. I was able to solve the problem, but my stuff was so messy that, it was like, dude, what are you doing? This is crazy. This is bonkers. You need to clean this up. You need to move this over here. So I'm going to get you guys all squared away in that front. And even if you're saying, you know what, I just want to do indie games or whatever, your biggest obstacle in making games is going to be yourself. And it's going to be that you're going to make a bunch of confusing code that works, and then you're going to go back and you're going to look at it, and you're going to be like, what was I doing? What was I thinking? So you got to document that, because your brain is weird. When it comes to programming, you have this weird amnesia. Once you solve the problem and you move on to the next problem, you're going to come back a couple months later, and you're not even going to remember making the functions that you made, and you're not going to remember the steps that you took. And if you didn't document it properly, or you did it in some convoluted, confusing way, not only are you not going to be optimized, you're not going to be able to fix anything. And that's where I got with my last thing that I did, Peace Restored, my game. It was if I wanted to go back and make, let's say somebody said, hey, I'm going to give you $100,000 for Peace Restored. We just want you to implement these features into it, and put a little market, in-game purchases. I couldn't do it because I got it so it just worked, like held together with glue and tape, and that's not what you want at all. It's going to happen. Your first game is going to be like that, but you don't necessarily have to go through all the same painful steps that I did with as messy as that is. You can make stuff a lot cleaner, and you might think, well, who cares? I just want to get my thing working. No, you do care. You just don't realize it yet. Organization, that's the number one thing, and I fight for it. I fight with myself over it all the time. Got to get organized. And you also got to be optimized. So just because you can get something to work in this engine, and I haven't even been showing you this, just because you can get stuff looking cool and you can get all these things going, if stuff's not optimized properly, you're gonna have major issues. You're gonna have major performance issues, and stuff's not gonna work. It'll be fine for the first game. It might give you some motivation to keep going, but really optimization is where it's at, because it doesn't take much for these projects to get, hundreds of gigs large, and we'll get into this eventually too, the big blueprint C++ debate. Yeah, optimization does matter, and when you're pushing the engine to its peak, to its absolute peak, yeah, doing something slightly differently, doing like like using squared distance rather than distance, because you know that it doesn't have to do a division in there, and you know that division is hard on the processor. Knowing these things make a big difference, and I'll show you that when we get into more of the calculations of stuff and how to really get that out there. And I'm still learning that. And replication. We'll get into a little bit of a technical discussion real quick. Replication is the biggest drain on your game. And you can see that if you look at my old tutorials. Basically what I'm doing is I'm sending, this is terrible, but I'm sending tick every frame. I'm telling the game to replicate a variable, which is absolutely terrible. That's like the worst thing you can do. Yeah, the old videos were good to show you, hey, here's how to make an RPC call, and here's how to get onto the server, and there's a client and all these things. But you do it like that, and you're going to get weird-ass stuff that happened, just like that rubber banding effect that you saw in the other videos. And so I'm going to clear that up, showing how you properly should do that. But yeah, replication, it's huge, and it's a big deal. And, I know there's some guys that are out there that are like, well, I'm just making single-player games. Well, really, almost all games are even if they start single-player, it seems like there's always some multiplayer element that needs to be in there. There's almost always some sort of replicated variables that need to be in there. Not all games, but man, more and more and more. It's a rarity now to find just major games. And if we're going to be talking professional here, major games that aren't multiplayer now, you don't see it as much. There's some, even if it's co-op, or it's still the same premise. You still got to understand replication. You still got to understand client server talk. And that's big, and that like getting your head to be able to think in server client relationships, dedicated servers, listen servers, that's absolutely critical. Some people they didn't start thinking that way from the beginning, and I can tell they really don't. They're not thinking like, okay, this is a server, this is executing on the server. The reason these clients are getting these variables is they're not replicated. And I'm telling you right now, if your solution to everything is just clicking multicast or doing something like that, that is not the way to go. And I know some people are going to be like, well, it works. What does it matter? Once again, optimizations. And we're going to talk about that. Whenever these next videos are going to be coming out, I would like to say start of January. I'm going to start pumping out videos. I got a move to go through. I got a bunch of stuff. Not trying to give excuses. I'm just trying to say, hey, well, when is this stuff actually going to start coming out? So I may have another chat video like this where I go over, because these videos are very easy to do. I don't have to, really get technical and in depth. Those technical, I have to do a lot of prep for. But I definitely do want to do technical videos. But I think this is better than nothing, right? And really, I was starving more for somebody like telling me what I'm telling you right now than anything. I needed the motivation to even know, could I get in there? Is this some good old boy system? Am I ever going to make it? Yeah, you absolutely can. And it's totally realistic to think that you could be doing what I'm doing, which I can't tell you about. But anyway, this is a side project that I'm working on. I'm going to say right now, it was funny. I actually had a bug when I started this video up. I thought my whole thing is messed up. Basically, the sound card I'm using right now, I'm getting new equipment here soon, does not like Unreal. Unreal does not like it. So I've noticed there's just some weird effects, and it was crashing when I was exiting. But anyway, this is just a little side project I was working on, and some of the stuff that we're going to cover. As you can see, we've gotten rid of any of the rubber banding issues. And I'll definitely show you how to properly do aim offset. Now, if you notice, the one thing that I'm going to show you in future videos, not the one thing, but the biggest thing is I'm going to show you how to do properly turn in place, because I've seen asset place ones that have turn in place. They're doing it, I don't want to say they're doing it wrong, but they're doing it in a way that's very bad. But I could show you how to actually do the proper turn in place, and you can see how there's a little bit of yaw first. This took me forever. Like, I could always get it so, okay, he's turning all the time, his legs are moving all the time, or I could get it to where, okay, it's turning here, and then I'll tell the server to turn it, this amount. Well, that is not the way to do it. Basically, all of these, the majority of the replication functionality that you need is built into the engine, guys. So doing all these RPC calls and all this expensive stuff you don't have to do. When it comes to movement, there's no reason I would need to replicate that because it's already replicated. But there are certain things that aren't replicated, and it's kind of just one of those things when you dig into the code, you just find out. Just kind of like how control rotation, you'll notice the pitch will be replicated, but the yaw will not be. How do we get around that? And so, but just to kind of break you in a little bit, how something like this turn in place is even working is really I'm telling the legs not to move. So the capsule and everything is actually moving, and then I tell the legs, okay, it's okay to move after a certain point. So it's kind of it's if you didn't know that, it would take forever to figure out, okay, how can I get this to work? But it's very interesting. We'll eventually get in that. I'll probably just show at first, how do I get my animations to move in there without doing a ton of RPC calls and anything like that, because really that each client can do those calculations. And we're going to talk about okay, well, what calculations could be handled on the client, what calculations could be handled on the server. And this is the problem I was doing before. I was having all this stuff. Not that the server was bogged down, but that I was sending RPC calls to the server and then replicating back to all clients. And that's what really was bogging everything down. You don't need to do that. Each client calculating an animation is not a critical thing, and so it doesn't. It's kind of hard. What do I mean by critical and not critical? Something like a score, something that tells you won or lost the game. That's something that should absolutely only be handled by the server. Detecting, damage and all of those things, absolutely only handled by the server. A freaking flash or whatever from muzzle flash, each client could do that. That's something that you would handle on like a multicast event or something like that. The actual animation, the server's already taking care of where I'm at in the world. So that's fine. But as far as what animation, each client can determine based off of what I'm doing. Calculate direction, for example, which is something that's already built in the system. Each client in the animation blueprint can do those calculations. So we'll get into that. I'm going to show you just this little project I'm kind of working on. This is just what I do in my side time when I want to really up my skills in it. Ironically, I always find I learn something on my own, and then what do you know? The problem presents itself in the real world and something that I have to do. So learning stuff on your own is great. And so just a little thing, we'll definitely cover like drag and drop functionalities. You can tell you changed over there, changing your weapons, stuff like that. You got these little, and knowing can you see how this is updating over here? Knowing how these systems work because they're sharing the same file. That's why it's interacting over there. It's not actually a bug. It's just how these components work, and if they were on separate clients, they wouldn't be doing that. But I'm getting way into the weeds. This is all placeholder stuff. But how this would work. You pop that over there, and then you could look over here, and you see, I got a gun, and these are just silly text I put in there. But yeah, it gives, and this is all replicated appropriately, all of that sort of stuff. So we'll get into that. And yeah, so I just want to give you guys an update. Stay tuned. Let me know. I have been reading your comments throughout the times. I've seen the types of stuff that people want to see in regards to there's a lot of well, how do I, do a pickup in general, and I know my animations aren't put in there and everything, but how do I pick this up, and how do I make sure that the data is actually transferred into the weapon and all of these sort of things. So we'll go over that and the optimal way to do it. And there's lots of different ways, but there's also lots of wrong ways that I'm going to steer you away from, stuff that I had done in the past that once again learned the hard way. So anyway, just wanted to give you guys an update. If you liked it, give a thumbs up. If not, leave a comment saying what could have been better. I'm not trying to freak you guys out with all this stuff. We will it's important to have a balance between blueprints and C++. We're going to go into that big debate. I know there people get emotional when we start talking about that, what you do and what you don't need. But that was a big mystery to me too. Okay, when should I be using native versus visual scripting? Like when, why, and can I make an all blueprint only project? Well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about what conditions you might be able to do that, and in what you won't. So anyway, I could talk forever, but I won't. I'll see you guys next time.